You're cracking me up today.
Yeah. You gotta have fun with it. My goal is to laugh at least once a day. So,
I love it.
and to have fun at least once a day when I'm working. So definitely try to add it in.
Right?
How are you
Such a
doing?
good. I'm awesome. I was live on Playing with Possibilities earlier this week with
Mm,
Cecile Armstrong, one of our authors and friends. And I was explaining our Women Connected in Wisdom dance move with the
yeah.
shoulder rolls.
Shoulder.
And
Kill him with the shoulders.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a little gray and gloomy here today in Atlanta, Georgia. Like
Yeah,
it's
it
kind
is.
of the first gloomy fall day we've had. Like
Yeah.
I see you've got your jacket on
Mhm.
and I've got my first scarf of the
Mm.
season,
I was
right?
thinking about a
So,
scarf earlier.
right?
Yeah.
Definitely a change in season here.
Yeah. In a lot of different ways. And I love fall. I was thinking about the question you asked me. I think you did ask me one of these last episodes, which season is my favorite? And even
Mhm.
though spring is my birthday, I think fall is my favorite. I love when the
Mm.
temperature is like that perfect 71 and a half. The leaves are changing colors. I love going up in the mountains or in nature and seeing all the different leaves and a whole lot of trees. I just think it's so beautiful to look at. And I'm a band nerd, so we were at the games. I was out at band practice. I was outside in the fall. So, yeah, it's like the perfect time to be outside.
Right? I love the smells of fall. I like a
Mm,
good when you walk outside and you smell a campfire
yeah.
or yeah, or just the wind smells different
Mm,
during the fall. So I like all the
that's
senses that I mean, I think I like that at any season. Like the change of
mm,
season, your senses kind of get reignited. Like you're like,
yeah.
oh, this is new. Like it's either
Mm,
colder or it's warmer. It's,
yeah.
smells different. I like all of
Mm,
that.
yeah.
So yeah. Should
That's
we
a good
introduce
point.
ourselves and
Yes.
kick this show off today?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Hi, ladies. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and author, the founder of Shalo Glow, an all natural handmade personal products company that helps people glow from head to toe. I am a champion for your self care, business care, and intentional wellness.
Woo! Hi, y'all.
Woo-hoo.
I'm Christine Gotro, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, published and best-selling Amazon author, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself in community care.
Yes, together we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co founders of the Women Connected in Wisdom community.
And we like to get together every week with special guests for weekly intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do
Yes.
this? How do we do it? And have
Oh my
fun while we're doing
goodness.
it, right?
Right, right. And have fun and stay sane. The sanity is important. Fun and sanity.
Right? This week has felt especially intense. Like we were talking before the show, but a
Mhm.
lot of people, my phone has been just popping off with text and calls and clients and a lot it's really intense right now. Have
Mhm.
you been feeling that?
No, definitely. We've been talking about hostile energy, in
Mhm.
different places and circles where I spend my time. So our topic today on spiritual wellness is how I stay grounded. I remember I
Right.
was oh, here's a story, here's a story. So I was talking to these guests, and we know that Papado is amazing, but not everything always goes as planned, right? So there were these guests there. It was hour after we closed, table of four, birthday party. So they're excited to celebrate, and I had to tell them that you're not going to get to eat dinner. Right. We dropped the ball,
Mm.
could have done better. We always grow through our opportunities, right? But I had to be the person to go tell these guests that, hey, unfortunately, you came out, you got dressed up. We're not going to deliver. Never fun in the hospitality industry, right? And as I was dealing with the situation, rightfully upset, guest is upset, and I'm allowing her the space to be upset, right? One of the servers he comes up to me after and said, "How did you do that? What books are you reading? Like, I need to learn how you did what you just did because you didn't pick up her energy, you respected what she said, you took care of her, and you were not moved." And spiritual wellness is how I stay so grounded in everything that we have to deal with. So I'm excited to have our conversation today.
I love that. And our guest is a guest on the podcast, one of
Yeah.
our authors for Women
Ooh,
Connected in Wisdom, and somebody who's very wise, talking about
yeah.
staying grounded. How do we stay kind to ourselves, right? Because I
So
could imagine, because you're in a managerial position. I mean, I
mm,
could imagine like the shoulds, you could have should all over yourself,
mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm.
And you were able to stay separated and grounded and
Yeah.
rooted. So I like that. I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
So anything in the news that we need to talk about before we hop in here?
Not that I can think of right now, when and maybe our listeners know or don't know because I don't always talk about it, but I love you, Christine, and our friendship because you keep me abreast to current situations, political movements, and events that are happening that I should be paying attention to and things like that. Because as far as the news is concerned, I'm unplugged. It'll trigger me all day long. I need some positive information. Let's balance it a little bit, but I get
Right.
that it's needed for a certain reason. So I am not always a person to ask about up-to-date news, but, um,
Well, we are in
yeah,
election season, so
we
I
are
we
in
can
election
speak to
season.
that, talking about staying grounded. Make sure you are up to date on where your polling place is and
Register into it.
when early elections start, because they're
Yeah.
starting depending on where you live. Like in Georgia,
Mhm.
they're starting next week.
Yeah,
So
they are.
check out if you can early vote, or if you need to vote by mail, or
Mhm.
when your day is. But make a plan. Like one
Yeah.
of the things we talk about when we talk about getting the vote out is make a plan, y'all. Put it on your
Mhm.
calendar, have a buddy, know what you're doing, take a couple of folks with you. Like I always like to say, hey, you need a ride, or make that plan to go
Yeah.
vote and take a few people with you, because it makes a
Yeah.
difference. It is the
I love that.
very basis of our democracy and of our advocacy. So
Yeah.
we don't want to take it for granted.
Yeah. And especially me, when I think about us and our
Mhm.
conversations over the last 4, now going on 5 years with Manifestation Mondays, and I look back, I think about some of the things I've said, right? About, I don't actually feel that way. Representation is important to me, or this, I think I should change the way that I said that because that's not exactly what aligns. And for me, voting has been, I mean, we've seen the ramifications of it recently, right? With the change in women's rights over their bodies and don't control women's bodies, let's control guns a little bit more in the conversations that we're having. So had we been, and not that it's again shooting or anything, but if we're intentional about what the values are, what the policies they're planning on bringing into play while they're fulfilling their term, we can be a little more proactive about what's about to happen instead of, oh my goodness, what are we talking about, what do you mean XYZ happened? And so that's what I think about when I think about voting this year.
Right, and get educated, and we will
Yeah.
put some
Yeah.
links in our show notes for no matter where you are in the nation. This would be pertaining to the United States, but we will put a link in where you can check out your registration and where your polling place is and things like that,
Yeah.
because let your voice be heard, right?
Mm. And
It's
that's what
important.
when we talk about spirituality, that's what I think about, the seasons where I felt like I could say more, in the seasons where I felt like I could say less. When my mom was
Mm.
sick, I felt like she was sick and I stopped praying as much. I wasn't using my voice as much. And it's understandable why. Same thing happened when my dad was sick. But instead of, again, shoulding or this should be this way or I'm supposed to be doing this, is, well, why is this your reaction? What is the things we can process here? What are the things we can learn? What are the things we could just sit with? And what does that mean for your next step forward? How do we stay grounded and connected spiritually and give space to what's going on? And that's what I feel like a lot of this stuff is with the energy around elections that happens in this country and other countries, right? We talked
Mhm.
about international travel. Maybe you don't want to travel if there's a tumultuous election going on, being cognizant of that. But also, the world is tumultuous. There's things going on, the house beside you, the neighborhood up the street. So how do you stay centered? And what's that voice that you listen to and the voice that you talk to yourself with? That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm excited about it.
Right. And
Yeah,
I want to bring our guest up before we talk about our personal practices, because
yeah,
I want to include her in this conversation, but also those
I'm excited.
practices, right? Those spiritual
Yeah,
practices and wellness practices that bring us back to center
mhm,
when the world has done its best to knock us off, right?
yeah.
I think that's important. All right, are we ready? Should I bring her up here? So we can
So
jump
first,
into this conversation.
let's do the definition. I'll do the
Oh, yes.
definition and then we can introduce her. I'm so excited. And yeah, I want to talk about personal practices. I'm interested in what she does. Okay, guys. So for spiritual wellness allows us to be in tune with our own spiritual selves. This realm of wellness lets us find meaning in life events and define our individual purpose. It can be defined through various factors, including religious faith, values, ethics, and morals. Regardless of whether you believe in a particular religious faith, there is always something to be learned about how you see yourself in the world.
Mm, I love that definition.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Let me introduce our guest, and I'm gonna ad lib a little bit of her bio. I just need to let her know that because there's something that was missing. So here we go. Cynthia Phelps PhD is a researcher, international speaker, coach, and an Amazon best-selling author, and the founder of InnerAlly, a company that builds evidence-based tools to improve resilience and well-being. She teaches about the power of having a kind and compassionate inner voice and guides people to explore their own emotional landscape to create customized inner support language. Dr. Phelps has 25 years of experience in digital interactive design and has been developing technologies from online classes to mobile apps to help people learn and change their behavior. We need to talk to her about a Women Connected in Wisdom app. You can join her and others in practicing at the Facebook group Inner Allies or email Cynthia at InnerAlly.com. And we're going to put all that in our show notes, but let's bring you up here. Cynthia! Woohoo!
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the
Welcome.
show. Were you okay with that addition that I put in your intro?
Beautiful.
I know that's happened since the last time you were a guest on our show. We're so delighted to have you, my friend.
Yes.
You wrote a chapter in our book, and your superpower about connecting people to their inner voice and teaching us how to be kind to ourselves. So you want to tell folks a little more about that?
Well, sure. The main thing that I think everyone needs to know is that I needed to sort this out for myself. And so I had a very cruel inner voice. It was not a kind or compassionate inner voice at all. And so it held me back in life. And so I am very passionate about helping other people, particularly women who have negative voices, because it's not benign. It can actually cause harm in your life. And so, that's why I am making tools and processes and practices for people to be able to better be kind and gentle and forgiving to themselves.
I love that. And I know this because I know you and have been a fan of your work for so many years, but tell our listeners about the research behind it. Like why, like this isn't just frou-frou. This isn't just somebody decided, oh yeah, this will make you feel better. But
that's right. So at this point, gosh, there's probably about 18 years of research here in the United States on this topic called self-compassion, which is basically compassion turned inwards towards yourself. We as humans are really wired for compassion. It's part of the way we are social with each other. And that is it's kind of ingrained in us. And so when we see someone suffering, quite frequently, we have the ability to look at them and approach them and comfort them and help them. And it's kind of in contrast with when we ourselves are suffering. So you might have a very different response with yourself, like, why did I do that? Or, something that's just not very gentle or kind.
Woo, I know this to be true. I used to think I had a really good inner voice until I started hanging out with you. And all my friends started hanging out with you and calling me on my inner voice, right? Shannon does it all the time. She'll like,
Yes.
hey, what inner ally do you need for that?
Yes, it's so important. And I love your chapter too, Cynthia. I love how you say, and I told you this before, right? But that it starts on a nerdy note because it's about the research. And that's so important, right? Like Christine said, not that we just say, hey, I think this is a good idea, but no, I needed something. This is what I know for a fact has worked. This has saved my life, right? And then
That's
I
right.
know that based on the research, it's not just me, it's other people. And it makes sense to use a better voice for ourselves and other people. But a lot of times that's how we check it, right? Would you talk to your friends like that? And
Right.
a lot of times we treat other people better than we do ourselves.
Mhm. And so the system that I've developed is a combination of self-compassion research and like methods to help raise your self-compassion. There's a scale. If you want to measure your self-compassion, you can do that at self-compassion.org. And what I'm interested in is each of us, our own inner voices are unique to us. And oftentimes they are created in our early childhood. They can frequently sound like a parent or a caretaker in early childhood, or a teacher or a coach. There's somebody who had like an impression on us. And we can even adopt other people's inner voices because, we do, even though people don't run around saying exactly what it, how they're speaking to themselves in their head, like it kind of seeps out here and there. When you hang out with somebody, you tend to notice them saying things. And so there is some patterns behind why people speak to themselves in a certain way. And there is a psychologist named Jeffrey Young who made a categorization system that he calls a schema. And these are the ways that people basically think in a way that's maladaptive or not so good for themselves, right? And so the InnerAlly system, it takes a look at that. So if you actually take the quiz on my homepage, it is based on that system, what kind of things, maladaptive schema you might have. And then the inner allies themselves are the essential emotions that you need to nurture to be able to meet those particular needs for yourself. And so it's targeted system and it's customizable in that you can create language that is resonates for you and really feels kind and comforting for you. And so I think that's the important piece. It's not just general self-compassion. It is really more about what do you actually need to thrive in life.
I love this, Cynthia. I love it for so many reasons because I know it works. I've used it myself. I've used it with my clients. I love your card deck that you have with the Inner Ally. I love how when we talk about spiritual wellness, like you can use your what works for you with your inner ally. Like you can weave all of that together with your beliefs and the things that support you and the things that make you closer to your source. And so I love that your system has a way to weave all of that together.
It's interesting to me because my personal spirituality has to do a lot with, well, it's somewhat similar to your manifesting Mondays. It has to do with how we speak about ourselves and what we want in the world, right? So that inner dialogue that we have about what we're going to do and what we want to see happen, this kind of inner voice thing is very similar to kind of what I do with InnerAlly for people. And so, for me, it bridges, like there's a bridge between the research and my own spirituality, because we know a lot about how you talk to yourself. It can make a big difference. And so, here's an example. If you tell yourself certain things, if you have an affirmation and you use I am, one of the things, it can be very strong kind of way to speak to yourself. But if you say that to yourself and you don't believe it, then it really helps to soften it to turn that phrase into like a may I, something a little bit gentler, more self-compassionate, because you don't want to create language that you're like beating yourself over the head with, right? You want to be kind and compassionate. And so, for instance, if you, around whatever thing that you're speaking to yourself about and that you're working on creating your own customized phrases for, if it is something that has been kind of traumatic for you in the past, one of the things that research shows is that you can change your perspective to you and say, you've got this, or, you deserve a wonderful life, or you are worthy of compassion. So this type of a phrase pulls back into the third person perspective and can make it more useful for a person who, if the I am phrases might feel a little too harsh, and may even be triggering. And so the research on like how we view the world as well is really fascinating. So when I was a youngster and I was in college, I took a class that was called Perception. And it was an entire psychology textbook that was about our sensory systems and how we perceive the world. And I was really blown away by the class because the core thing that it taught me is our senses. Like, for instance, we don't see with our eyes, like we really see with our brain. And what we do is like we piece things together, right? And so when we talk, one of the latest things in emotion research as well is the same thing, is that the way that we experience our emotions is a combination of like how we're feeling in our body and then how we're labeling that. And then that combination is like what we perceive as an emotion. And so there's more and more research that's showing that we have agency in how we create our own reality. And now if that doesn't like spill over into spirituality, like I don't know what does. And so it's very heartening to me that, consistently from the old, research on perception that I studied to this, it's really the research in emotions right now has undergone a paradigm shift. That, we thought that emotions were just the same in everybody across cultures, and that is just not true. Like, we cannot understand what kind of emotion somebody's feeling unless we ask them, because it's this construct between what our bodies are feeling and what our minds are labeling them. And so like we have a role in creating our own emotions. We have a role in creating our own reality with our language. And so there.
I love that. No, I love that. There's two things that popped up when you were talking. The one is, it's kind of like labeling, is it excitement or anxiety? Like those are very close depending on, right, how you're feeling and what you're labeling it, right? Because I often go with excitement. And people around me are like, aren't you anxious? I'm like, no, I'm excited. Like, let's do this, right? But I'm a risk taker. The other thing that popped up when you were talking, Cynthia, was about what the words that were coming up were toxic positivity. Like when you were talking about if you've been beat up by affirmations before, or if it hasn't felt good in your body or your spirit. Is that kind of what you were talking about? Like when...
It's both. So it's if you're hard on yourself already around that particular topic, it can be easier to pull back from an I am statement to a may I or a you are. But if, let's say you're working on phrases around a situation that has caused you harm, if that harm is still like a really kind of hot topic for you and it's triggering for you, one of the things you could do is pull back and use a you phrase, like you're going to be all right. And you're speaking to yourself. The you, the may I, all of those are language towards yourself. And that's one reason for the characters on the cards, because you can use the characters as a way to speak to yourself. And I think that's that's really effective, because when I first started practicing self-compassion, it was very obvious that if I could speak more kindly and supportive to myself, that I would raise my level of self-compassion, and I would get like all these amazing outcomes, which, everything from like better productivity, less depression and stress. And, some of my research is less if you're higher in compassion, you're less risk for addiction. And so like this is really impacts your life in many ways. How your sense of well-being, your sense of happiness. And so the reason why I kind of focused in on the language was because I sucked at it. And in fact, I didn't even know. I didn't even realize until I heard my mentor actually speak her inner voice aloud, and I was really kind of blown away in that I had studied. It had been probably 3 years at this point of studying self-compassion, and I really was dug in on the research. I thought I knew everything about it, and here was this whole piece of how you talk to yourself that like I only got on a theoretical level. And so I wanted to make it really practical and tangible for people, because I thought, well, shoot, if I'm not getting this, I bet there's other people that are not getting it as well.
Yeah, I love that. And what it makes me think about on the psychology side is self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like what you say about yourself is gonna come true. So I'm so stupid, I shouldn't have whatever you would say, then you start to believe that because and that's the interesting thing too, because the positive things we question, the negative things we inherently believe, right? Because that's what a lot of the other voices say. So when we talk about conditioning and even in the statements where it might feel, and I've done that, right? You've got this. And I could say it to other people and they'll be like, no, Shannon, you're you. You got this too. And I say, I guess I do got this. You know what I mean? And it's the separation, but you're this person that, does all this stuff. Why would you have that? But that's just the reality of the situation. So I love how you have that step up. It kind of also reminds me of, yoga or working out. Sometimes we have the limited mobility. We can't do the full push up. So I'm going to do the one with my knees on the ground, and these arms are still going to get the workout, and I'll still get the benefit and feel better because I did the activity instead of worse because I have an unhealthy lifestyle and I never got started. So I love how you help people get started with that.
Well, you bring up something, this you focus on the negative. There's actually a term for that in the research called the negativity bias. And
Hmm.
researchers think that it is there because if we pay attention to things that are negative, it helps us to protect ourselves. And so it's kind of like a survival strategy that is like in our species, if you will. And so it's not a you problem, but it's important for us to recognize that it exists in all of us. And so this is why gratitude journaling works so well, right? Is it offsets that negativity bias, but the inner language, supportive inner language offsets the negativity bias as well.
That's so good. And I love your story. It was brave to share things that if somebody looks at you, like you said, you have to ask somebody how they're doing, or you might not know, and that's the dangerous thing about women who are so amazing as all the women that we have the opportunity to be connected to because we are the people that take care of everybody else, right? So they might not know if you don't share. And even if they don't know, okay, that's for them and our relationship, that's the community care. But what about you? How are you taken care of? How are you doing when you go home, when you go to sleep? At the end of your life, how are we doing? And so I love talking to myself better every day, increases the wellness in every day. And then over a lifetime is a beautiful life in a relationship with me staying connected to the source, like we're talking about, which is where I get my validation from. Right. And also having a better relationship with myself. And it's really been amazing, especially as a small business owner, because now instead of being like, okay, Shannon, last year you were great at the financials. This year you're not being as specific and being on time as much. Well, the capacity is different, So as we grow, how do we keep the habits that we need? And I am able to take it as a learning opportunity and do it as a SWOT analysis instead of you're backsliding or you're not doing what you need to do or this isn't going to work. It's wait a minute, let's look at the context and then see where we need to go next.
That sounds very wise. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we change all the time. Our
Yeah.
needs change and even our goals change. And so I love the idea of a regular SWOT analysis.
Yeah, and it's like you said though, like how you feel in your body affects how you perceive other things happening, right? So we've talked about our self-care practices, and I would love to hear yours too, yours specifically outside of gratitude and things that we've talked about around spiritual wellness. But checking in with our bodies, like Christine always does. Where do you feel really good, and where, are you feeling a little pain? And breathe in between those two places. And for me, that helps me stay centered through work and all the different situations that we find ourselves in. But also when something's going on and I want to get upset, it's like, wait a minute, I'm able to kind of hold it instead of just react. I'm able to pause and respond instead.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think sometimes when people come to me for coaching, they have this idea that I am perfect at self-compassion. And that I've got it all figured out. And that is when I really remind them that this is just a practice, right? All of the self-care things are a practice. And I sometimes struggle with creating regular practices for myself. And so I know for sure that I will arrange my environment in a way to support me. And like Christine, you were talking about this before, like you do yoga as a meditative practice, because like the movement with the meditative practice works for you, right? And I take qigong classes, which is something where I have to show up with other people and do a thing, and that is really important for me. So for me to kind of structure my life to keep myself grounded and healthy, and the whole 8 dimensions basically, and I think, like you said, Shannon, sometimes we change and some habits stop serving us, and then we have to bring in new habits. We have to let go of habits, right? And that's one thing that I love about self-compassion, is that we can give ourselves grace when we change. We're not these consistent automaton people who never change and are, always, once you become compassionate to yourself, you're just done. And I mean, that would be awesome, kind of, but I don't know, it'd probably be pretty boring too.
That's a good point. Kind of monotonous.
Well, we were just
Yeah.
talking about the changing of the seasons, right? And I think often our practices change around that because the light changes. Like, I don't know, y'all, when it gets colder, I don't want to get out of bed as quick as I like, there's
Yeah.
some practical reasons around it too.
Yeah, but that's literally what Cecil's newsletter was about this week. And we talked
Right?
about it. And it was because the sun's going down, it's getting colder. Maybe it's harder to move your bones. And I said, that makes a lot of sense. It just shifts. And so you shift with the season to still be effective.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think about that. I think about when if our listener gets off track, Cynthia, like say they realize listening to this episode, hey,
Mhm.
I really don't speak kindly to myself, or I could use some support in this area, or what does speaking kindly to myself even look like? Like where do you start? Like where do you start with that relationship with your inner voice?
With grace, first of all, uh, because we're always kind of refining it. If you're on the path of being self-compassionate, you're never going to, it's just a journey. And that's the most important way to start, is to know that, you're not in it to try to get an A. You're in it to nurture yourself and to hold yourself gently. And if you are just beginning and you haven't really thought about it at all, the easiest way is to think about the last time that one of your friends was suffering and came to you for help or support. Because so frequently we're really good at helping other people. Now, we may not say the perfect words, right? Because oftentimes, like a person who's suffering, the words are not, they don't have to be perfect. You have to show up and you have to care and you have to be kind and you have to be gentle, and you wouldn't say things like, well, why'd you do that? Right? Like, so it's a pretty good model for the most part, thinking about how you have treated a friend in the past who was suffering, and then taking some of those actions, some of those words, some of those inspirations even, and then trying them on. One of the things that happened for me when I did this is it just felt weird. It didn't, I felt like I didn't have permission to be kind to myself. Like if I was kind to myself, like the piano would fall on my head or something, right? I was a little concerned that something would happen, like bad things would happen if I were all of a sudden kind to myself. And it turns out there's a lot of different ways that people are resistant to practicing self-compassion that are, based on our culture and so forth. But I think so giving yourself the permission for it to feel a little awkward is another great thing to kind of have in your back pocket as you're beginning to practice. And that's kind of why I created the Inner Allies again, was because I wanted it. They're almost like a cheat sheet for how to talk to yourself, and instead of having to make everything up myself, I could just turn to some of these phrases and then say, oh, well, I want to adapt it for this particular situation that I'm in right now, that I'm facing this whatever struggle or difficulty. And that makes it a lot easier. And sometimes I even think about it like putting on the costume of that inner ally. And Christine, you had this great method of when I can't remember what I was getting ready to do, but you said, who do you want to be when you do that? And I could pick anybody, like, dead or alive or mystical or whatever. And that was so fun and refreshing, right? And that's some of the way that I think about the inner allies, is whose costume do I want to wear? Do I need the shield of security that comes with the knight? Right? Or do I need the loving kindness that comes from the grandmother, or the cheering that comes from the cheerleader? And that makes it easier for me. It makes it a little more fun, quite frankly, because a lot of this, self-help stuff can sometimes become droll.
Well, it's another thing to do sometimes, right? It's another thing to put on the to-do list.
Another task, right?
Now, I think, did you hold up your cards a second ago for our listeners that are watching? Will you hold them up? And so for our listeners that are listening, Dr. Phelps is holding up her Inner Ally deck that you can find on her website. We're going to put a link to that in. And also you can find it in our VIP wellness bundle that you get if you sign up for the VIP conference, for the Women Connected in Wisdom conference. But oh, I love that one. Yeah. Yes. Read the Saint. So, since we're talking about spiritual, oh, sorry, Shannon. Can she read the Saint?
Yeah, read the Saint. And then there was one that we shared the other day. It said success. Is that the King card? Yeah. Can you read the King after you read the Saint?
So the Saint, the emotional superpower of the Saint is forgiveness. It says, I embody the life-changing power of forgiveness. I help you face your mistakes with compassion and grace instead of harsh judgment. And in fact, I have a workshop coming up on a mini retreat, I'm calling it, to try to make it sound less painful, to a mini retreat on forgiveness. And it's all inner forgiveness. So it happens within yourself, whether you're forgiving yourself or forgiving someone else within yourself. And so I'm excited about that. That's going to be November 19th. And so the Saint is really, really critical, because you can hold yourself back if you have not forgiven yourself for something.
And before we go to the King too, can we talk about that a little bit? Because when we talk about financial wellness or social wellness, friends and relationships or work situations, I feel like forgiveness has been so key, whether it's, hey, I know I could have done better, I'm sorry about that, or forgiving myself for being in that situation. But then if it's somebody else and this person is never going to apologize, right? Depending on our definition of closure, you might not get closure from that person. What are you going to do? And forgiving that I allowed myself to be in that position sometimes, or allowed somebody maybe to say something without standing up for myself, that has helped me be able to move past stuff when before I might have still been looking for that. And that's when we can stay the age of whatever situation we deal with. That's a great question, Christine. Christine just asked, what date is the mini forgiveness retreat?
It is November 19th, 2022. Right
Awesome.
before
And
the holidays.
we'll
Yeah,
put
that's
a
perfect.
link. Oh, that's a great way to,
Yeah.
before you get around all the family or people that might activate you.
Yeah. They might shit on you. Yeah.
Right. I am going to put a link to your website and how people can reach you too, Cynthia, but
Yeah.
that'll all be in our show notes.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
great.
Okay, so the King, I shared this. We were talking about the Amazon bestseller, right? And one of my bartenders asked me, "How do you feel now that you're an Amazon bestseller?" And I don't know if I know how to verbalize it all the way yet. So I would love to talk more about that. What does that one say?
Well, the king's superpower is success. And this card says, I am the master of my domain. I help you recognize your successes and feel confident about your achievements. And so this card is so much is about permission. Permission to celebrate your successes, permission to recognize your successes. Even if your success is going to bed early.
Huge win. Yes.
And as women, now that we're all best-selling authors,
Yes.
I think it can be hard to celebrate our success sometimes because we're supposed to be humble. And while that is true, we're not supposed to actively make other people feel bad about themselves. We're more conditioned, though, to hold ourselves back. And so the king is all about permission for you to celebrate your successes and also to go for your successes and to not hold yourself back from any kind of inner dialogue that you have that, oh, I'm not good enough to do this or that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. We were just to talk about Sacil again, talking about at the end of your goal and everything that you work for, right? Rest and rejoice. And a lot of times because based on the environment, it's important to know where the dangers are. Like we said, that's natural, right? Stay alert, stay on your toes, make sure you know what's going on. But some of the stuff that's going on is we're Amazon bestsellers, and we can say that too. I can say, hey, the election is coming up. I need to be mindful of it. And hey, I have a book, and you can get it on Amazon and these other places.
I love how excited. I mean, I love y'all. It's new. If you're just tuning into our podcast, this is a new development in the last 2 weeks. That's why we keep repeating it, because we're so excited about it.
Really. Yeah, we're
And
celebrating the success.
we are celebrating, and you can find that in the link to our show notes too. Yeah, I think about how, like, often I don't think I'm cruel in my inner voice, but often when you say that about putting limitations, like I'll do the thing about, oh, you're not ready, or it's not the perfectionist part shows up, right? I think so many, like, it's like, oh, is it good enough? And I mean, not that, I mean, how to say this, like, I don't really struggle with, am I good enough? But sometimes I think, is the product good enough? Or is it they're so closely intertwined sometimes, especially when you're entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. But what do you got for us there? What InnerAlly, or what do we need when we are going for it in our businesses and our lives? And
well, I think I actually just want to take a moment and tie it back to your definition of spiritual wellness, where you said it's all about how you see yourself in the world. And so your inner voice creates kind of a lens for you for how you see the world and how you see yourself in the world. And so, quite honestly, any inner ally that can help you be more kind and supportive to yourself is going to help you. And that's kind of, people ask me like, well, what's the best inner ally? And I'm like, all of them. They're- they kind of all do the same thing, but they come at it from a different perspective. And so let's see. One of the ones that pops into my mind, Christine, is the innocent for what you just talked about maybe not being good enough. It is self-acceptance, and it's really the opposite to perfectionism. And so the innocence says, may I accept myself the way I am, even with my imperfections. And so this ally helps you to set realistic standards for yourself, approaching challenges with curiosity and play, which I think you do excellently.
Thank you, my friend. Yes. I was just thinking, I wanted to give you a shout out because we were, the class that Sheila and I teach on Tuesday mornings, the Radical Self and Community Care. We were talking about you this week. So I wouldn't be surprised if you got a few orders for your cards because, often when we do and we talk about self-compassion and bring you up because you were in our book, Stillpoint, that people get excited. I mean, I love promoting your work. It's part of the joy of Women Connected in Wisdom is like, hey, y'all, come meet my friend. She's ridiculously smart and she's got something that works really well. So
No, really, it's so good. And I tell the story sometimes. I went to the recording for Black History Month and was doing this quote, and they tried to pull. They said, pull the sadness out, and I couldn't find it. I didn't know how to act a certain way on camera because I've worked so hard to be genuine and be myself, but how to articulate the emotions and break them down the way that you do has really helped me get clearer. And that part is something that I've been working on. So it's been amazing. I can't wait to get my cards. I'm excited about it.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
And I hear what you guys are saying about it depends on what you need, right? Maybe you need a cheerleader, like, you got this, you can do it, right? Or maybe you need the grandmother, like, you got this. I'm sorry that it's so difficult, right? But you'll get through it, and whatever that person would say. So I think if somebody were to ask me, I would probably say whichever one you need. That's the best one
Mm-hmm.
at that time, whatever is relevant. And that's what I think about when I think about spiritual wellness and even connectedness. What do I need in that time? That's the best fit. We don't need to be talking about finances, instead we're talking about emotions. We can have the best resources financially, I'm still going to be in the same position. So that's why I love the Connected in Wisdom, the network that we're building, because sometimes you might need this and sometimes you might need that, but you can make it make sense and get plugged in where you need to.
One of the things that has happened recently is my mentor, Dr. Kristen Neff, she just published a book called Fierce Self-Compassion. And so it ties into what you just said in that sometimes you need different things. And so each of these cards are a way to be self-compassionate to yourself. But if you look at it through the lens of kind of, I call it nurturing self-compassion versus fierce self-compassion. So nurturing self-compassion sounds more like, I would say, the grandma character, where it's like, oh honey, you've got this, like, you're doing great. That like sweet voice that is there to nurture and take care of you.
Yeah.
But then you can also have a fierce voice, one that says, no, I'm not going to do that. That goes against my values. Or no, you're not allowed to speak to me like that. Which is like a very strong and powerful voice. And so you can really choose to kind of use whatever flavor of self-compassion with whatever card you want.
Yeah. And I know we have the wisdom in action. And just in case you don't remember, it is something that you say you remember. So the action step that you're doing for spiritual wellness this week. But even before or maybe after, Christine or Cynthia, however you ladies want to do it, I have another question about the digital. What did we say in your bio? Digital, where is it?
The different
digital
tools that are
interactive
developed.
the digital interactive design, because a lot of times social media and us being online is skewing the way that people see themselves, right? So we're intentional about having very healthy positive places online that right now feels like a minimum, so it's in the midst of all this stuff, right? So how do you have that conversation with somebody who's working on their inner voice but also trying to balance the comparison that happens when you're online?
Yeah, that is the comparison is the thief of joy for sure. It's I could talk for a very long time about this topic, so I'll try to be really brief because when I first started designing online or mobile tech, it was back before we only thought about like how it was going to make the world a better place. We didn't really understand that money driving the process would create some systems that weren't harmful to people. And so, what we know now is that, infinite scrolling has a negative impact on people and the ability for people to, have a highlight reel of their life. It can seem like when you're sitting in your own house and it's kind of boring and you're feeling kind of frumpy, watching somebody's trip to Greece can feel pretty damaging. And I think that you can definitely use some language with yourself. I would first of all just normalize the fact that you're only getting the very best of people on social media. When I take my photos to do my marketing, I take 25 photos and then I pick the best one, you know and I consider myself fairly authentic. So I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that everybody's putting it's not real. It is just a slice of reality. And to just love on yourself, to know that you're worthy because you are human and you deserve compassion and grace. You don't have to perform. You don't have to be something else. That is a core spirituality message that I preach all the time, and that is that you are worthy because you exist. And I believe that to my core.
Mm,
I
I
love
love
that.
that.
Thank you so much. Yes. Okay. So I asked you before, I know I do like 2, 3 part questions sometimes. What is your wisdom in action for this week for your spiritual wellness?
One of the things that I have done recently is I have just signed up with a personal trainer.
Mhm.
And I know that doesn't sound like spiritual wellness, but as you know, all of the 8 dimensions are connected. And
Yeah,
so I am feeling kind of low in that dimension of wellness right
I
now.
hear
And
you.
so I'm excited about kicking that up.
Hey, wait, I love that. Okay, so if you had to do a hashtag, what would it be?
Ooh, I think hashtag you can do it.
Mm,
Mm,
I love it.
love that. Yep.
Hashtag you can
I
do it. What
might
about
need
you?
that reminder some days.
We
No
got you.
problem. Yeah, definitely got you. What about you, Christine? What's your wisdom in action this week?
Well, what I'm thinking about is I'm about to go camping for 4 days. And so nature is very much tied to my spiritual practice and being outside. So I think mine is going to be hashtag go to nature.
Mm. Go to nature. I'm writing it down. I love
Hmm.
that. I have a lot of hashtags over here. You said so many like key things today, Cynthia, but I think if I had to pick one, and usually I break the rules and do a couple, but I'm gonna do hashtag start with grace, because for my spiritual practice, I feel like that has helped me connect to other people, right? Let them be who they are, and then you respond accordingly. But also with myself, right? As I start new things, go into new seasons and new levels, start with grace. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Yes.
I love that one so much. And before we go, y'all,
Mm.
we don't often do this, but I need to show y'all Cynthia's website. And there's a reason. It's going to be in our show notes. But the reason is I need to give a shout out to my god doggy. So, Cynthia's has a picture of Aliata on her website. And it was Aliata's birthday yesterday. So Aliata, if you are listening, your Tia loves you and happy, happy birthday. And next time I see you, I will bring you a doggy treat. So
Happy birthday, Aliata.
isn't she just one of the cutest dogs you've ever seen?
Really
For
cute.
those that were not watching, you can go to InnerAlly.com and see a picture of one of the cutest wiener dogs ever. So you know, I had to give
Love
her a
it.
shout out because she does listen. Every time she hears my voice, she starts barking and wants to get up and see me on the computer. So, well, Cynthia, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. I'm so
Yes.
grateful for your wisdom, your work in the world, and just who you are, my friend.
Yeah.
Just really, really grateful for you.
My pleasure. I am so delighted to be in community with both of you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Talk to you soon. Oh, hey, before we go, you're speaking at the upcoming Women Connected in
Oh,
Wisdom conference
right.
at
Yes.
the end of October,
What's the
right?
date of that? The
Um,
25th?
you are, yes, you kick off our conference. You are one
That's
of our
true.
first speakers. So on
Gonna do it with a
Tuesday,
bang.
October
Yes.
25th, y'all, you can get more of Dr. Phelps' wisdom, and the
Mhm.
conference is free if you buy a general ticket. And they also, if you want to sign up and get the VIP ticket, you get all the conference recordings plus a
Yeah.
really cool wellness bundle that includes Dr. Phelps' InnerAlly cards. So
Yeah.
whoop, whoop, we'll put a link to that in the show notes and check it out.
Yes.
And you can always go to the womenconnectedinwisdom.com website. So, Cynthia, I'm going to
Yes.
pop you back in the green room, my friend. And thank you so much for being here with us today. So appreciate you.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Such a good, I feel like we could talk for like 2 more hours.
No, definitely, always. I
Right?
mean, and that's how it's been. That's why we're here, right? We said we need more time. More people have to hear these conversations.
Right? So
Yeah.
good. It just gives me so much to think about and just reflect on for this week. So,
Yeah. And I think I need to listen more, when we talk about your inner voice and your the way you spend your time. At first they say just monitor what happens.
mhm.
And I monitored a little bit, and just like you lady said, I was surprised with a little bit of the roughness that I heard in the voice. So I'm gonna do the compassion test and see what it tells me.
Right? The quiz.
Yes.
Hey, Catherine, thanks
Yes.
for listening today. Catherine said earlier that she's a big fan of Dr. Phelps and also that
Yes.
that was a fabulous interview. Thanks for being here today. We appreciate you. Yeah,
Thank you,
go to the
Catherine.
quiz. We're going to put that link in our show notes. You can go to InnerAlly.com and take the quiz or sign up for Cynthia's forgiveness mini retreat that's coming up, which
Really
I
important.
know the power of that in my life has been really
Yeah.
good. So,
Yeah. And especially when we talk about spirituality, I think about the first step of self-care that you guys talk about in
mhm,
Stillpoint. That's separating, right? Some of this is
mhm,
my responsibility, a lot of it is not. And in life, a lot of the
mhm,
stuff that happens is out of your control. So
right.
having that
And,
forgiveness is
right.
important.
Well, and one of the steps, the skills of self care that we identified is letting go and surrendering. And I think
Hmm.
often that pairs really well with Dr. Phelps' work and also
Yeah.
about forgiveness. Like sometimes, we just have to let it go.
Hmm.
And like you were saying earlier, like the person, you may not have closure like you imagined it, but there are tools that you can
Hmm.
learn to let it go. And I know that she's going to give those in her upcoming workshop. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I
My
love
friend, I have so enjoyed our conversation
Yes.
today. As always, it's so
Episode
grateful for you.
88.
What?
Yes, thank you
What?
so much. Whoop, whoop. Almost there. We're in our 80s now. Look great for 88. Okay, guys. So again, we have the conference coming up. You want to see us again, go get your ticket. We have the recordings available. That stuff is going to be amazing. But in the meantime, we'll see you next week, and be well, be wise, be whole. Talk to
You
you
too.
soon.